In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. In the hairdressers this week, I picked up a copy of Bon Appetit magazine. And on the back, there was a full-page ad that took my breath away. Big black letters at the top of a black and white photograph. 4 words: set your soul free. Do you want to guess what the ad was for? Think a minute. A Mercedes-Benz driving off into the distance, price starting at only $29,900. Think of it. For just under 30 thou, you can set your soul free. Wow. It kind of took my breath away. I had a good laugh about that. I mean, I get it, you know, the tap on the accelerator, the car surges, and you leave the others in your dust, and you feel like you're flying for just a second there. I mean, I get the appeal of a good accelerator, and maybe there's some little spiritual spark in that somewhere, maybe. But it really made me think, especially because in the same week I'd seen another very different full-page piece in the New Yorker magazine. Looks like a cartoon at the outset, but at the top it says Sketchbook by Zohar Lazar, full page. And it's a picture of a young woman sitting cross-legged on a piece of cardboard in what looks like a subway passenger tunnel. You know, like the one you take to go from Grand Central to 42nd Street, that tunnel to the shuttle. You see her, she's sitting on the piece of cardboard wrapped in a blanket. She's holding a baby, and there's another child with her who looks to be about 3. They all look cold, they all look tired, they all look sad. Big, big, big on the wall behind her and above is one of those MTA, New York Police signs, giant letters. If you see something, say something. And of course, the sign in front of her just says, help, please. Help, please. If you see something, say something. Somehow the tension between those 2 pictures just won't resolve for me. Between the Mercedes and the Bon Appetit magazine and the promise of fulfillment on the one hand through riches, and the somber faces of that woman in the subway tunnel. I can't make them square. I can't make them square. In the 50-some-odd years now since the civil rights movement and all that Martin Luther King Jr. did to help us think more clearly and pursue justice more honestly and be more fair with one another, especially across lines of color. I know we've come a long way, but how can these 2 things exist side by side? We've come a long way, but we haven't come far enough, not by a long shot. The woman in the drawing appears to be a person of color. The artist, Zohar Lazar, has been very gentle with his ethnic shading. So she looks black, but that's not the main point. The main point is that she's so very poor. The point is that her family is homeless. 50 years after the Civil Rights March. You know, you could look at Martin Luther King's agenda, and you could actually sort of take the part about racism as if it were just a slide and lift it up and set it aside for a minute, and there would still be a lot there. There would be a lot about the rights of the poor. There would be a lot about the fair exercise of citizenship in this country. There would be a lot about human need. Put the lens of racism back on, you get a harsher picture. And you see that there is still more work to do. When Jonathan Kozol wrote his book, Amazing Grace, about the South Bronx a while ago, he pointed out that in the United States in a given year, 23,000 young black men went to college, And 2.3 million young black men went through or into the criminal justice system. 23,000 against 2.3 million. The odds of a young black child growing to reach their 21st birthday without being shot in the streets, not as good as the odds for a young white child, especially if that child is growing up in Chicago or Baltimore or the Bronx. The numbers are not very happy. Unemployment rates are higher among people of color and among Hispanics in this country than they are among white people. And it's still very difficult in this country to escape poverty. Actually, that's difficult for anyone. I caught myself at the 8 o'clock saying something I wasn't sure I could substantiate because I'd heard it and it just popped out that I knew a person who was working 3 jobs and not over the poverty line. How can that be in the United States? How can you work 3 jobs and not be over the poverty line for a family of 4? We are not done. We are so not done. Some of this is about color. Some of it is about our economy. Some of it is about the devastating gap that is emerging between the very wealthy, frankly, us, and the very poor. Huge gap emerging. So I look at the Mercedes ad and I smile, and I look at the drawing and I worry. How can so many well-intentioned people not quite make the changes that need to be made? I don't know. I do know that we still have quite a bit to do. And because some days the punch list on the way to a just society looks so long, I need some encouragement. And so do you. And oddly enough, on this day, today, I want to look for that encouragement to the Gospel according to Luke, where Jesus said to any who would listen, here's the deal. Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, pray for those who hurt you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. In other words, love your enemies, love your neighbors, love the stranger, love them all, and show yourself to be a child of God who loves us all. Love them all. That's the job. I don't know why it makes me feel better to know that, but it does. That's the job. It's just love. There's a little sign on the bulletin board at the outreach from the friends who've been out on the Kairos Outside weekends when they work with families of incarcerated people. Little poster that they have for the staff and volunteers. Love, love, listen, listen. Listen, listen, love, love. That's the job. How will you do it? Simone Weil, the great French writer and thinker, said, love is attention. Love is attention. If you see something, say something. Please see something. Please look. Please listen. Jesus gave these words saying, I say to you that listen. Those of you who have an open heart and mind, listen. Here's what you need to do. Pay attention. What does that other person need? Where do we get our information about the world? How much do we really know about what it's like to stand in a line at immigration? Or to worry about whether you're going to keep your Medicaid? Or to worry about whether you will qualify for food stamps? Or whether the food stamps that you get will cover what you need? Because of the recent cuts. Sometimes it doesn't. Our friends from the South Bronx last week made this very clear. They're running out of stuff down there. They're running out of stuff. Sometimes running out of baby formula. Your food stamps won't cover diapers and wipes. Pay attention. What are their lives like? You might even have an opportunity to ask, what is it like for you? Become good at this, friends. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, you're different from me. What's it like, huh? You'll find the way. It's actually no harder than warming up at a cocktail party, you know? How did you get here today? What's on your mind? That person in the office pool who seems to be always late or absent, what's going on with her actually? How are the people in your company who are paid the least making out these days? Is it a living wage? Is there somebody who works for you or near you who has one or two other jobs and still looks a little down at the heels? Is it possible that what they're making they're sending home to someone else? What is life like for them? We can do this. We can do this. Smart people, educated people, well-intentioned people who know how to ask a question, how to listen to the answer, how to pay attention. It's not the kind of question you're going to get on the SAT, and it will not get you into college. But you will know more about life in the world. And wouldn't that be better? I think when Jesus told us to love those who hate us, he knew that it would be better for us if we did that. He knew that it would be better. There's a third image, and this is the one I really want to leave you with. A photograph taken by James Corrales in 1965. PBS has been showing in these brief art spots. Maybe you've seen it. It's a picture of the march from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama in the spring of 1965. It's a phenomenal picture. Large group of people marching in ranks of 4 or 5 over the crest of a hill. Some of them carrying American flags, most of them black, a few of them white clergymen in the second rank, people in the front much younger. Most of the adults, the men in suits, even hats and ties, the women in dresses, they are marching. It was the march from Selma to Montgomery for voting rights in 1965, and it is a triumphant, heart-stirring photograph. There's a cloud over these people that looks like something out of Michelangelo, like this giant storm is going to burst, and they don't care. They are just marching. And the 4 young people in the front of the line with one adult with them are leaning back and striding forward with their chests out and their chins up. Did you know that 10 days before that, they had to stop that march? They tried to march from Selma to Montgomery, and they were stopped by the state troopers with tear gas and dogs. The troopers attacked the marchers, including the women and the children, so that it got named Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday. They tried again 2 days later in what they nicknamed Turnaround Tuesday, because on Turnaround Tuesday, they set out again, and Dr. King himself stopped them, afraid of more bloodshed, got them to turn around and go home. But after that, President Johnson sent out the National Guard to protect them and submitted his voting rights legislation to Congress. And so they walked 4 days, 54 miles, 25,000 people. They marched from Selma to Montgomery. They marched. I want to remember them. I want to honor that. I want to believe that they were brave enough to march that 3rd time because they had listened to what Jesus said about turning the other cheek, about loving and continuing to love. In their way, they made so much more possible. This may not be the day of mass marches anymore. They rarely capture the kind of attention they used to get when there were only 4 news channels and one of them had Walter Cronkite. But it is still the time to lead It is still the time to walk the walk. It is still the time to listen for the lessons of love, to practice the way of release. King said, hatred paralyzes life, love releases it. Hatred confuses life, love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life, love illuminates it. Will you love your neighbor? The one you know, the one you've yet to know, the one who needs you.